Well, hello there.
Hello again, David.
I am expecting at least a Josh.
I'm here. Remember, this one starts at 5 after, so there's no rush.
Got it. Okay.
Gives us
Welcome.
all time to get our copies.
Right. I have sent you back and forth on TAC issue 101. So thank you.
I haven't even looked at 101.
Focus on this thing for now, but I'm just excited by the data. Data analysis. I like data analysis. I like actual numbers and real information as opposed to guesses.
Yep, I hear you, man. I mean, that's part of the fun. I have so much crazy NPM data. Like, it's awesome.
Coworker of mine at my former company often joked about too many people wanting to do data-free analysis.
Data reanalysis.
No, data-free analysis.
Oh, yes, that I
Yes.
agree with 100%. Yes.
I mean, there will all. My point on that issue was there's always going to be stuff you want to know. There isn't data. You've got to just use expert opinion, and that's okay. But when you have actual real information, you need to start replacing it, or use the experts to explain why, in fact, what seems to be true is totally false. Which is, I mean, sometimes the data is screwed up, but you should definitely let the data lead you where things actually go. All righty.
Totally, man.
Okay, so I need to hurry up and open up our meeting notes.
If everyone can sign in, David, if you've got them open, I'll put the link in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yep. I can do that as well if you want. But if you're doing it, great.
I win. We'll need it. We'll need it again, I'm sure.
Yep. Do you mind if I switch the date format to ISO?
I don't care.
Okay.
I hate all date formats equally, so.
I prefer YYYY MMDD. It sorts nice. It's clear to everybody.
It does. Anything but the American date, right, David?
No, the European and US date systems are equally messed up. So neither of them sorts correctly, for one thing.
I know. My favorite are the dates like January 3rd, that it's like, is this European or American date? I don't know.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to say I can tell you about the progress on the false positives. I know we're not quite on the meeting time, which is I was busy the whole time on the Washington D.C. thing, so that is on my do list.
Well, that was a pretty big deal. I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it was very successful. So, but if there's other folks who've made progress on it, great. So.
We recording? We are recording. All right. All right, why don't we get cracking? Who put the OSS fuzz introspector presentation?
That's me, Navid here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah.
All right, amazing.
You're
Should
first.
you jump in?
Jump in, man. I'll take notes as we go. So just
thank you.
Do your thing.
I am gonna share. I have a couple of slides. So let's see. So you are seeing my slides, right? Is that correct? Do you have my slides shared?
Yep, we see them.
Yep.
Amazing, amazing. So I have a couple of slides here showing, I just wanted to share the status of, fuzzy introspector with you. Basically, if you happen to attend one of our, fuzzing collaboration, probably a lot of this material is, repetitive to you, but I wanted to, bring it up to the, the actual working group that this introspector is part of. So, yeah, so along with our, fuzzing infrastructure like OSS fuzz, cluster fuzz, we were thinking of having a tooling to help the fuzz developers to understand the internals of their fuzzing campaigns in terms of how their fuzzing, basically how their integrated fuzz targets in the OSS fuzz is actually performing in terms of reaching the code that they are interested in to fuzz, where the fuzzer is actually blocked, or how they can actually improve the fuzzing in terms of if they want to target a specific part of it, etc. So for that reason, Fuzz Introspector is a project that is incubated in OpenSSF. And basically, it's a tool to get overall understanding of how the fuzzer is doing and how to, improve the coverage in terms of, performance. So it monitors the fuzzer performance and aggregates different kinds of data, like dynamically collected coverage data, like hit frequency, etc. Also, it provides understanding of, digest of, static data, right? What are the good entry points to write, fuzzers to target your code of interest. And also, it helps in identifying the blockers in terms of coverage blockers, where the fuzzer is basically having hard time to bypass some conditions, etc. And also provides a recommendation to improve. In terms of fuzz blockers, we may identify two kinds of blockers. One is coverage blockers, which are the places of the code that the fuzz engine basically is having hard time to bypass and go beyond to reach more coverage. Also, it may have performance blockers like shallow failures that prevents the fuzzing from going forward, something like misconfiguration in terms of like not enough resources allocated to fuzzing, etc. Also, like uncapped memory allocations that causing out of memory. So all of these can be identified and helpful to improve the fuzzing. So along with that, Introspector also provides a recommendation in terms of what are the good, what are interesting entry points to write fuzz targets for to reach more coverage and reach more complex code. It also these are important to have in terms of having recommendation for what functions to focus if the current fuzzing is basically blocked on somewhere. Something like libfuzzer focus function can help in terms of directing the focus on some portion of the code to increase the recommendations to increase the coverage. So currently we are pretty close to finishing the integration with OSS fuzz. It's supporting all C and C++ projects, and we already are seeing its effectiveness in terms of recommending new fuzz targets and pinpointing where the coverage blockers are. And as a result, by incorporating these recommendation and information, we were able to increase coverage for a couple of projects that I will provide a couple of examples here. Before going into examples, I just quickly show how the interface looks like at the moment. So it starts with the general overall information that how the current fuzzer are reaching the potential functions in the code and all the different different summary of the code, that like what functions are the most complex one, what are they being hit, which one are not being hit. Specifically for each fuzz target, we are showing how it is reaching its statically reachable potentials in terms of coverage. If they are not reached, the portion is marked green. This table is very important in terms of if the current fuzz target is not doing good, where the functions are that are blocking our fuzz engine. So those are the functions to look into the code and identify the branches that basically are blocking us from going further. And for example, here we can see that big portion of the code is not actually hit at the
Can
runtime.
I ask, so you
yeah.
say block you from going forward, you mean where there's proper error checking, for example, so it doesn't, I guess, let you pass in garbage? Is that what that means?
So yeah, that's basically can be one of the cases. Another case can be just a simple branch that your fuzzer is not successfully providing valid or meaningful input to explore all its subsequent sites. For example, you have a branch, let's say, if value X is like bigger than 5, your fuzzer is not providing over 5, then the one side of branch is not taken. So that kind of situation can be a blocker for a fuzzer as well. I have an actual real world example in my next slides actually. So another thing that I like to highlight is where we suggest basically new entry points and showing that if we write fuzz targets for these functions, then we can increase the coverage of the functions in the code. So moving forward, here I have two examples. One is for Xpdf. Xpdf was interesting to us because basically there were a blog post by Project Zero deep diving into the NSO hack into iMessage users, and basically the vulnerability was in Xpdf library, and specifically in a function, which even though the Xpdf was integrated in OSS fuzz, we were not able to basically trigger that by our already infrastructure code. And the reason was that the OSS fuzz was not basically covering the vulnerable function. So we looked into fuzz introspector report for the Xpdf and found out that it is actually reporting a new entry, new fuzz target to write a target for, which is JBig2 stream reset, which potentially can reach to the vulnerable function, which OSS fuzz was not covering. So we moved forward and wrote the fuzz target and integrated into OSS fuzz, and here we are. On the left is the vulnerable function, which was not being hit at all. And on the right is where we took the suggestion of the introspector and wrote the fuzz target, and now we are exercising the vulnerable code, basically. So that's the increase that we got by just incorporating the suggestion from fuzz introspector. Another project is where, like JSON.NET, which it has already one fuzz target integrated, but most of its code potential was not reached, and it was identified that one function is being blocked in terms of coverage. For example, here this switch case, which is checking on the variable kind, always one side of the case is taken and the rest of the cases case entries are not taken. So basically this is one example of fuzz blocker, Josh, referring to your question here. So this is an example that one side of this switch case is always taken, the rest is not taken. So looking at this code, we were able to provide the new fuzz targets that exercises the rest of entries for the cases for switch case. And here we were able to.
Navid, can you go back
No
for
worries.
just one moment? So what are the
worries.
numbers, like the 212 and the 0?
I'm sorry. These are, yes, I'm sorry about that. I thought I had to provide information. So these number by the lines are basically number of times the fuzzer hits this line of the code. If it is 0, means that the fuzzer is not reaching it. If it is blue and some numbers, it means that this entry, this line is basically hit that many times. For example, for Xpdf, on the left, you can see that the vulnerable function is not hit at all, none of its lines. So, but right now we are making a good, coverage and the number of hits for the.
Quick question. You are only doing statement coverage. You're not doing branch coverage, correct? Or are you also doing branch?
Actually, we are working on branch coverage. Yes.
Okay, but you're currently
Yes.
you're doing statement and you're working on adding branch.
No, we have the branch coverage, and the reason that I am showing this is because this is easy to visualize in terms of line coverage. So I am just using the a standard line coverage report. So yes, this is actually populated based on the coverage from the actual fuzzer that we are getting. So yeah, so this is an example that the blockers are identified, and we were able to, basically unblock the fuzzer in terms of, making it more green. Green means that we are hitting more lines of the code or more branches in the code. So as I said, we are integrating the introspector into OSS Fuzz, and for the projects that are C and C++, right now the project maintainers can see introspector report on their portal and just use it to their good and improve their fuzzing campaign. So that's all I have here. So I'd like to answer a question if there is any. Daniel, yes, please.
Daniel has his hand up. I want and Daniel first.
Hello, great. This looks great. We are working on binary fuzzers, and I was wondering how far you are, or this tool is for helping binary fuzzers, at assembly level.
Assembly level, yeah. So right now we are working basically for the OSS Fuzz, and for OSS Fuzz projects we have the source code basically, and the two main source of information that introspector relies on is one, the coverage report. So as long as you have the coverage report, this is good. Another one is basically we use an LLVM plugin to instrument the builds and identify the call graph at the code level, so statically. So if that source of information can be provided like another way. So right now we are not supporting binary. That's the short answer to your question. But I'm saying that if we can provide, so coverage report is there, and probably if you can extract the call graph, because the call graph is important for recommending new fuzz targets, saying that, hey, these couple of functions has potential to reach a bunch of code that is not already covered. So that's the reason that we are using the call graph. So that's the direction to go if we want to have support for binary as well.
We have the call graph based on, for example, Ghidra. We have the CFG, the control flow graph. We could instrument also LLVM-MC for the last stage generation.
Yes.
I have some students. Do you think we could contribute with that, with some final thesis, for example?
Sure, definitely. We can follow up and see. As long as you have those two sources of information, coverage and call graph, then we can fuse in the post processing of fuzz introspector and have some sort of report for your campaign, for your fuzzing, etc. as well. So yes, I see.
Yeah, we do have the call graph. And sometimes we
Yeah.
have information from Dwarf. So
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I am posting my email here. Definitely we can contact. Sure.
okay, thanks.
Thank you.
David, you're next.
Yeah, kind of two multi-part, but one is a fuzz introspector's been part of this working group for a while, but I don't think a lot of people know about it. I mean, I've even put it in the OpenSSF Dex as one of the many projects that's in OpenSSF, but unless you read the fine print, people don't notice. It looks like there's enough new functionality that's worth kind of making a little post about it. Do you think it's time for that?
Yes, it is actually. We are drafting a blog post, and we are in the process of, having it, published. With,
Okay. So
yeah,
so
we are.
I have a couple requests if you're going there. Okay. One is if Google posts, Google can post whatever it wants. Okay. But if there's going to be an OpenSSF post, I think we want to make sure that people take a look. And in particular, I think we want to make sure the TAC isn't surprised by
Sure.
mystery posts, especially since we've got new TAC members. They're not familiar. A lot of people, frankly, aren't familiar with Fuzz Introspector. The second thing, and it's kind of related, is ideally before that post goes out, I think there needs to be a little more information to someone who pops up on the site to help them understand what it is, maybe a little bit of how to use it. I think a lot of folks have viewed this tool more as if you're writing a fuzzer, here's a tool to help you improve your fuzzer. But if it's also a tool for Joe average developer who's using a fuzzer to help them improve their fuzzing process, I think we need to help give them a little bit because, for someone who's a little uncertain about what a fuzz target is, the current level of expectation for the materials is, I think, beyond what a lot of developers are at today. I'm not saying that's ideal, but just basically, hey, there's red coverage. It says there's not coverage. Is that bad? Yes, it's bad. But so basically, I think we need to give a little more hand holding so that they understand what this tool is for and how one might use it, and maybe even just beyond a demo of what you've shown, hey, I found this. Here's a specific fuzz target I added. Here's the code I added. Here's what I did with it. We don't need to do it here, but basically that next level down, so somebody who isn't familiar with this thing could say, oh, that's how you use this.
Definitely, yes.
Because if you make a blog post, people are going to show up, and if they can't figure out how to use it, that will be less helpful.
Yeah, I see.
Thanks.
So that that's in the direction of having documentation, and we spent some efforts in terms of documentation, and here is an in-depth walkthrough for the cases. For example, specifically to your reference that you said that, hey, we wrote this exact fuzz target. Here it is. Basically, we wrote a fuzz target.
I haven't seen. All right. I hadn't
here we
seen
go.
that. Is that new?
Here is the this is a new. So basically,
so the documentation is new. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yay!
Yes, I mean, I am just posting it here. So yes, definitely, I share the same concern with you. We have to be able to convey the message correctly to the users and different levels of expectations or expertise. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, I obviously haven't looked at that yet, but that sounds like the right direction. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I'm next. I assume this only supports C and C++ today. Is there a desire to support other languages, or is it
definitely
going to be hard?
Yes, we are moving forward with supporting new languages. Python, I guess, is the next one in the pipeline. So yes, we are. Yes.
Fantastic. Arnaud?
Yes, hi, thank you. I mean, full disclaimer, I'm a complete newbie in this kind of technology. So if this is a stupid question and you just want to tell me to go RTFM, that's totally acceptable to me. But to me, I was very interested in what you showed, but it seems like you were skipping a piece that for me, I'm like, this is magic. It's like, okay, you inform me on what my further doesn't hit. That's fine. But how do I actually go? What does it take to fix it? Is it fairly obvious to find how to change my further to actually hit that code?
Yeah, exactly. Very good question, actually. Very good question. Right to the point. Basically, that's the purpose of fuzzy introspecting, in terms of showing you that, hey, these are places that your fuzzer is not doing good, and what are the immediate steps that you can do for moving forward. As I said, referring to examples, for Xpdf, we used one suggestion from Fuzzy Introspector. Fuzzy Introspector provides some suggestions for the functions that if you write fuzz targets, then you get this many, like this percentage of fuzz coverage increase. So that's one approach to go. Another approach is basically using the blocker identifier. So if you dive into the exact location that the code is not going beyond, then you can understand that, hey, this is the next thing that I can do, like this. So what I did here was that I jumped into the function that the introspector was pointing me to, that fuzzer is having hard time to bypass, and identified this switch case to be imbalanced, basically. Like some entry is being hit, but the rest is not being hit. So then finding the root cause is the next step to see why that's happening. So basically that's the direction that fuzz introspector gives you or sheds the light on, and then you can move forward with that.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, if you don't mind me clarify, at least let me rephrase, because I think I understood what you said. I mean, one is you can add a fuzz target so you directly call the function that's not being called. But of course, the problem with that is that it's not being called in the same context necessarily. Another is, hey, I'm never calling B. A calls B. Why? At least statically, why is A never actually calling it? And basically finding a way to convince, to provide the data necessary to trigger the A calling B path, if that's the only path. So basically you have to go backwards to see what calls it and find a way to enable that path within your fuzz process. Did I capture that
Thank
accurately?
you, David. Yes, that's exactly how it works. Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm actually a fan of the latter, because the problem with the fuzz targeting is you're not necessarily capturing the real context. Whereas if you force it from the top, then you are, you're getting the program as it actually is.
Right. So yeah, we are doing efforts to make it even further in terms of going beyond this just pure suggestions and taking actions. For example, for libfuzzer, we have this focus function, right? So we have identified some function which is not covered very good. Then we pass it we have a feedback from introspector into libfuzzer saying that, hey, focus on this function and see how it goes. So
Thank you. That makes perfect sense.
This is so cool.
I did have one more question. You said only supports C++. Did I hear you correctly?
That's correct. Yes, that's the current status.
Why? Because so much of this doesn't seem to be specific. I mean, maybe it has to be executable.
Yeah. So
but
why is that? I did not provide a lot of implementation detail here, but the reason is that we have a compiler plugin for a static part of it, in terms of extracting call graph and etc. And the compiler plugin is LLVM pass at the moment, and it supports C and C++, and we lift the code into LLVM IR and do the rest of analysis. So the next step for us for adding a new language like Python and etc. is that we basically shift that static analysis part to support new languages. So that's the reason at the moment we are supporting C and C++. And basically our focus were on memory unsafe languages. That was that made sense to focus as the first step towards what Introspector is aiming.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
And I have one last question. I mean, so
Sure.
you're pretty like, can you click on slide 11 as long as you're sharing your screen?
Oh yeah, here. Oh here.
Are you publishing these pretty pictures anywhere? Because I know like OSS Fuzz runs across a huge amount of open source. Do we know like what those look like for a bunch of packages?
Yes, basically, if you go to the OSS Fuzz direct, basically portal right now,
Yep.
you can see for the projects that
Nice.
are supported, you can see the link. So you can just click on the link and go to one of these pages. So
Perfect.
yes.
Oh my
Yes.
goodness, that's so cool.
So,
Yes,
so
yes.
when is this going to be in the official OSS Fuzz, or is that?
So that's in the same directory of having the blog post synchronized on Google side and OpenSSF side. So that's the the direction that we are taking now. So yeah.
I love, you guys need to talk about this more. Like I feel terrible. I've never seen this before. This is amazing.
That's ours. That's on us. Yes.
This is, oh my goodness, this is the dream. Like anyone who's ever fuzzed before, this is it. I love this.
Hey, thank you.
I will say, and I just had a conversation, a post on the TAC, Josh. I think every working group should at least periodically have the projects within it, report on all the cool stuff they're doing, because I think we often miss nuggets like this. So this is perfect. Thank you, Naveed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Amazing. Amazing. I love it. All right, let's keep moving. Let's jump to the false positive spec. I don't want that to fall off the end of this meeting because my conversation could go very long or be very short. I have no idea. So what's the deal with false positive spec?
Right now, the main problem is that I was overwhelmed with that Washington D.C. meeting, so I haven't. I had to focus on that. So that's so we haven't made as much progress. Probably one of the bigger questions here is there's some scoping questions. Do we want to include all linters? Or are we really more focused on security related things? I'm not. I don't think it's insane to include all, but that is a broader road. Thoughts, comments?
What difference do you think it would make to distinguish between SAST and not security related tools?
I think a lot of the linter tools have their own different conventions. A lot of them use no-lint, which is not really the same thing. So so I think that's if you're looking at what people do, that's I think part of the trick. We don't have to answer that today, but
I think my point is that sometimes the line between security related tool and the generic linter is blurry, since sometimes some linters start bringing a security related rules. So I don't see a reason for distinguishing or for limiting this standard for security only tools. I think we can make good by including but not limiting.
Okay.
Before
there's
David,
I don't know, CPP check, for example, or you name it. Some tools were born as generic linters, then they grew up or they evolved to include security features. But it's like, I don't see how this could be different for Bandit or for, I don't know, ESLint.
Right. I think if so, what we'll need to be careful of is if you disable a false positive, it needs to be once you see some code that then needs to be soon quickly re-enabled. Otherwise, if it keeps hunting for the next thing to suppress that may be many lines down, you may suppress the wrong thing.
I mean, I've got no skin in this game, David, but
Yep.
from my
Okay,
perspective,
that's fine.
anytime we do things that are security only, I feel like they often end up falling off the cart because people get annoyed by them or they're not providing enough value to certain groups. Whereas when you combine abilities or features,
Mhm.
I think it often becomes an easier sell.
Sometimes, but you know what? I don't think that we need to have that fight.
No,
If we
right,
cover
right.
if we cover it, then we cover it. So, and I think the main concern I have is if you say suppress the next warning and the next warning is 50 lines down, the weeks you just ignore the a suppression should be with the line immediately related, so that we don't accidentally suppress the wrong thing. That's all.
Now, at the same time, like that's true of every linter, right? Like security or not, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And yeah, you suppress this, you take the line out, and now it's suppressing the wrong thing, which is always hilarious.
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking of is when you're implementing the code to say suppress the next message. An easy way to code this is I notice a suppression message. The next time there's a warning, I'll suppress it. But there are no warnings, and 300 lines down, you finally get a warning. It's the next warning. It got suppressed. Well, that wasn't what was meant. So I think we'll just have to make sure, and that becomes way more common when you have such different tools. So I think we just have to be more cautious and warn if you implement suppression, it needs to not do that. So I think we can word it. We just have to clarify that. Okay, thank you. That's all I have for today.
Perfect. All right. So the last thing then is a document I wrote. Let me open it and I'll put a link in the chat. So the reason I took this group over for anyone who wasn't here for the early meetings was there's a report Resilient Research did, which actually it's somewhere in the notes. If you scroll down, let me find it quick. I of course can't find it now. All right, whatever, doesn't matter. Oh, there it is, found it. All right. So what I would really like to see us do, and this is very related to what we just saw from Navin about the fuzzing work, where we have a lot of tools today, and I know one of the conversations in this group is always, oh, what should the group do? And there's, oh, we should create lists of tools, and like there's millions of lists of tools, right? Whatever. But Resilient did this blog post, and they measured tools to detect log4shell. And the powerful part about, I think, what they did is a bunch of organizations, the one I work for, Anchor included, we looked at this list and we said, well, we can detect more of this stuff. And so we did. And I would love to see efforts done where similar, I guess, tests, I don't know exactly what to call it, are created for a variety of tools. In my case, I'm most interested in like SBOM today, because that's just what I'm working on most of my time. And having the ability to basically say, like, here's a bunch of SBOM tools, here's what they detect, and here's what they don't detect. And it's not meant to be like, this is the best SBOM tool. That's not at all what I want to do with this. What I want it to be is like, here's a bunch of stuff, SBOM tool, here's what you detect well, here's what you don't detect well. Like, it's up to you what you want to do with this. Some might say, I don't care, I don't want to detect it. Like, for example, if there's an SBOM scanner that only detects Python, they won't detect PHP, and I don't expect them to either, right? So there's different ways to kind of look at this. But anyway, I finally found a few minutes to sit down and start just kind of writing some of this down. And I realized like there's more going on. Like the fuzzing is a great example, right? We have the fuzzing introspection project. Like we should keep track of that and understand what it's detecting and what it's not detecting. And I think you're doing a fine job of that today. So I obviously don't want to like be a pest, but you kind of get the idea. And so I just started laying some things out, and I thought if anyone has ideas or thoughts, add comments. I would love, David, is there a way we can move this document like into this project? This is currently just living in my Google Docs, which is stupid, right? Because that's not sustainable, but we can figure that out later too.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely can move it in. And a lot of cases, what we've been often doing is the Google Doc is the quick early rough draft, and then we move stuff into Markdown once we've got something plausible. So we sometimes don't worry so much because the assumption is that's not going to be lasting very long anyway.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but yeah, Jory, if you want, send a message to Jory. She will solve the problem immediately. She's awesome.
I will do that. Jory fixes everything. I love
Jory
it.
does fix everything. So
it's fantastic. we
yeah,
need more
so
Jorys.
We do. So 100% agree. So yeah, you can ask Jory, but really I think right now, start whatever you want to do, and we will fix the ship as it goes. But I'd much more just, if you think this is something that's worth doing. Now, I will say that this has been a little bit of a challenge. Measuring all tools is kind of a big, that's a big thing. You might want to start with one.
Well, absolutely. And that's, I even mentioned that somewhere down below of like, not everything. And additionally, we need to interact with groups that we want to work with, because you can't just show up and be like, hey, I measured your tool, look what I did. They're going to be like, who the hell are you and what are you doing? It's that never ends well. I've been in open source long enough to know that surprising projects does not make friends. So this is a big ambitious thing. I get that, but it is the reason I wanted this group to survive, because there was a lot of question about like, what should this group do? What's its future? And like, this is what I want to do. Now, that doesn't mean it's the only thing we have to do, of course, but I don't have a lot else to say. I think, read it. I value thoughts if there's other things people want to work on, but like fundamentally what I want to see is I want to see this group not have meetings every other week and like, that's it, right? I want to see us doing work off to the side and creating progress. And then this meeting is where we just talk about the cool stuff we just did, not unlike the recent presentation we had on fuzzing introspection. So,
and frankly, I would add also answering questions about, hey, I have a big question about the direction, like should this include lenters? I mean, I think the scope of project before you delve in, I think is a good time to have a larger gathering. But you're right, most of the actual work needs to be somewhere else.
Totally. Kathy.
Yeah, hi. Is there a reason SAST tools are not on this list?
I just didn't add them. I mean, I'd love to see us measure SAS stuff.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think that'd be great.
You know what? We already do. We actually already have a project specifically within this working group that does that, but it's been kind of moribund. But basically, some other folks had identified a whole bunch of existing CVEs, and then before and after. And the question is, can your tool here's a known vulnerability, can your SAS tool find it? And frankly, I think you could probably make the same question of DAST as well, but the fuzzers, and if it's a web app, for web application scanners. I'm careful about DAST because different people, everyone agrees that's a topic and nobody agrees what the definition is. So
you are correct. I just looked at it. I'll put a link. I'll drop a link in the chat here. But that's the CVE benchmark.
Yeah, the CVE benchmark, right? And it's not. It's been kind of moribund as far as I know. Of course, I may be wrong because maybe they're doing all sorts of cool stuff and just they haven't reported up on that project, on the progress they've made. So
they haven't had any commits in a year.
in a year.
So-
Okay, so yeah, but nevertheless, I mean, that's a whole lot of stuff for evaluating SAST, and I think that's I mean, having a whole bunch of actual vulnerabilities, past vulnerabilities used as a way to measure is, I think, a perfectly reasonable, way to measure a tool. Here's some known values, good, bad. Can you tell the difference?
Absolutely. And now on that note, this is the second part of what I wanted to, well, I guess the second problem I'm concerned with is, are there measuring frameworks that exist? Because like, I don't want to write a measuring framework. I mean, there's already one here, I guess, in the CVE benchmarking project. And maybe just trying to build off that to measure other things is the right way. But I don't want us to have 10 projects, each with their own measuring framework they built, because that's dumb, right? Like no one wants to work on that. We want to measure stuff. That's what we want to do. And I don't know if this exists or if we should just steal this one, because I'm looking and like, I don't mind their little graph they have. This works for me.
There is the SAMATE project, and I don't know
The
how
what
familiar
project? Can you
SAMATE. Okay, it's NIST
NIST.
related. Related. NIST SAMATE project. As far as I know, it's still active, but I haven't talked. I know the folks there, so that's an easy. Hey, is it still going on? Here, I'll even throw the link. This is the wrong part in the document, but hopefully you can fix it and put it in the right place, Josh. Okay, so the SAMATE folks issue a whole bunch of sample code of, here's vulnerable code, here's not vulnerable code. Number of cases they have pairs like this. Here's the not vulnerable. Most of it is what are called synthetic. In other words, it's not real programs. It's somebody wrote a program to show the difference between vulnerable, not vulnerable. That's really different than the CVE benchmarking. But I think the two actually pair pretty well. The synthetic stuff, the advantage is they're really simple and short. So it's much easier to do quick analysis and to assign them as homework projects. The CVE benchmarking, they're real programs, much bigger, more real. So I think those, and I think SAMATE has some of the non-synthetics too, but I think the two together are very useful, at least for SAST. I don't know if anybody's used them seriously for the dynamic stuff. I mean, I could call up Paul Black at NIST and he could tell me more.
Sure.
So I actually have the contacts there if you want to have them give us a presentation.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it to see what it looks like.
To present on so and now I'm not sure that they kept going during the pandemic, but at least pre-pandemic they had yearly, I don't know what you call them, bake-offs, where people would show up and run their tools on various things. The challenge that they always had is the proprietary suppliers generally didn't want to report results. So there was a lot of limitations.
I've run a lot of the proprietary tools on that test set, and it's surprising how much they miss. So I'm not surprised that they don't want to make them public because they missed a lot.
Right.
And that's fine. And I mean, we've been over this too, right? Like the DeWitt clauses and all that crap. Like this is all open source. If they want to play in our sandbox, they're going to come to us, and then none of that applies.
Right. And for the SAMATE folks actually have reached out to open source tools and run some of them against their tool set. And hey, I ran one of the tools, and my tool didn't find a lot of stuff either, and I didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think transparency and how things actually are is a good thing.
Sure. Sure. Well, and your tool isn't 7 figures a year, so.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and next year it'll be twice the price.
Inflation, right? Right.
Yeah, if you triple zero, what's that price again? So but yeah, I think yeah, I don't actually know if the NIST folks and the CVE benchmarking folks even know about each other, to be honest.
I'd be shocked if they do. I mean, I think this is one of the challenges we get in this space also is like a lot of people get a cool idea and they kind of work on it. And it's really hard to just discover what anyone's even doing. And I think that's one of the values I think that OpenSSF and I think this group specifically should strive to do is sometimes we'll get involved, sometimes we'll build things, and sometimes it's just like, let's make sure everyone knows everyone else exists and then they can take it from there, right?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's it. I guess if you're interested, add a note. If you're not, that's fine too.
Okay. Would there be interest in having NIST give a little presentation on Summate and so? Okay, so I'll contact. I obviously can't promise what they'll do, but
Right.
it seems like connecting different groups together is a good plan.
Absolutely, 100%. Yep. Okay.
Okay,
That's it.
I'll start making the contacts. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Cool. Does anyone have anything else to add before we all escape?
Just a housekeeping issue. I don't know if I know that some of the groups were updating their charter, updating their mission statement, that type of thing. Do we need to do any housekeeping like that as part of this? And David, how do you envision trying to now kind of reconcile the former scope of the OpenSSF to the scope host the meetings associated with the White House meeting just a week back?
Okay. Well,
You got 8 minutes, David. Go.
Go. Okay. Let me attempt to tackle the second one, which was kind of threw me for a loop because there is no planned. The scope of the OpenSSF is anything involving open source software security. That hasn't changed. Okay, so you're saying the White House changed the scope. No, it didn't change the scope at all.
Well, no,
there may be more
respectfully
resources.
disagree.
Now, there may
Well,
more resources and more things we can do and more things that people want the OpenSSF to do within that big, broad scope. But that's a different statement. So let me just say that I don't think the meeting was about, hey, we're going to eliminate the OpenSSF or it's wrong. I think it's enabling the OpenSSF to do more of the things it's been.
No, I guess I didn't make myself clear. Maybe I'll help if I come off video. My point was, David, is that if you say our scope of the OpenSSF is open source security,
Yes.
It's like saying we're going to solve world hunger.
Right.
So you've got to basically say, and this is my conception, is that when they redid the governing board back in the fall, and then they have recently like elected a new TAC, there's an opportunity to look at the existing working groups and this increased resource from the recent White House meeting and say, how does that affect each working group? Now, maybe some working groups won't be affected. Maybe some will be affected significantly. But I think the important things for our little tooling group and the larger initiative is to be very focused on what each component is doing, how it fits into this bigger picture, and how we all try to drive more effective execution, which I think is the fundamental message that Josh was trying to deliver. Because it's great that teams meet and it's great that people establish connections and share ideas, but the real value will start to, I think, come when the various working groups all efficiently execute to their various focus areas.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like really you're asking is, okay, we had a meeting with the with the White House. How does that affect the various working groups and parts of the OpenSSF? And I think the shorter answer is that is in the process of being worked. I mean, as soon as you talk about, hey, where does the OpenSSF put money? Well, first step, it depends on
I never said the M word.
You never said the money word. Okay, well, okay. I think the short answer is that's being worked, because really the first step was what needs to be done. And to be fair, that plan didn't say the OpenSSF was going to have to do every single thing of it. I think a couple pieces of that are probably more government roles, in which case governments have roles to play, and presumably that's what the governments will do. But for a lot of it, I think the expectation is that the OpenSSF is going to do a whole lot of it, and we're still in process of working that out. You had two questions, and that second one was so big and huge, I was struggling to figure out how to answer it. What was your first one? Because I don't want to lose it.
I can comment on the first one. It was about the charter and reviewing it.
Yes. Okay.
I looked over what we've got. We're actually in better shape than a lot of the working groups. And I think what we're doing still technically falls under the charter. We should definitely review it at some point, but I don't want to yet, because I think we're still working out a lot of kind of intent and purpose. But once we have that, yes, we will absolutely update the charter to reflect what we want this group to do and how we want it to work.
There's also just how does this group, come to decisions? It seems to me that, I mean, in the longer term, there probably needs to be something more written down. But a whole lot of the working groups work the same way. So I'm hoping that the TAC can kind of work out a more general one, and then say, hey, working groups, if you like this, go. Otherwise, we need to somehow move between too much process and no process. We can't figure out how to get anything done. So.
So if I may, I mean, taking another crack at what I think Jeff was touching on, but in a more narrow, more narrow fashion, it's like, I think it is a good exercise for the working group to look into how what we do here gets positions with regard to the work streams that are in the plan that was presented in Washington. And so that's a bit different. And I mean, David and I were, well, several of us were on the best practices working group earlier, where, there was concrete action decided to be taken in regard to that. And so maybe there's none that needs to be taken here, but I think it's a useful exercise to look into it.
Is that you volunteering?
I could have a look, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
David might know because he knows the
that
document by heart. So he may already have the answer to that question. Just tell us no, but it fits here and that's it. I don't know. David, what's your first take on this?
Yeah, can you repeat that question again?
Again, this is the, how does what this working group does, right?
Right.
Fit within the work stream.
Right. We are, that is being worked now. So,
but not by the working group. By who? By the staff?
More staff, but frankly, I think although if any working group says, hey, this part is more obviously mine.
Okay.
I mean, the best practices working group, by the way, has already said, hey, wait a minute, education, it's obviously us. There's no point in hiding. So why don't we get started?
What I was talking about.
That's right. Yeah. So, and to be honest, I think that was the expectation as well. So, that's a fair question. So yeah, I spent 10 hours Zoom call editing that document.
That's why I know.
So, yeah, I guess maybe we're out of time, but maybe that's one of the agenda items we can talk about next time is, hey, looking at that, are there any pieces that this particular working group thinks are really within its remit and should say, hey, we'd like to pick up this part of the puzzle.
That's what I was trying to
the agenda for next time, and I'll send a mail to the list asking anyone with opinions to add them to the,
Okay.
the agenda document, because I think that'll be easiest. All right, yep, it's time to
Excellent.
escape, everyone. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank
This was
you.
fun. Bye-bye.
Bye.